All right, beaters, everybody beating on and beating off with us. Welcome to the podcast. We are on episode 9. Wow, dude, 9 episodes in, and I got my stuff stolen, and we're still going strong.
Yeah.
So this is feeling pretty good. Ronnie is in the Philippines. There's a hurricane apparently.
There is. Yeah.
I'm in California, and it's sunny.
Yeah. All right.
That's just in your face.
Yeah. All right. That's totally cool with me.
That's not where I was trying to go with that. Is this like a big thing going on right now? Like, is it a big hurricane? I say that because I know in the Philippines there's always like typhoons and stuff.
Yeah, now would be the time. It's pretty trendy at this point. Yeah.
It's a trendy hurricane. Jeez. We have an awesome guest on this episode today. We have Monarey Martinez, who I had the pleasure of seeing on a show in LA. We did a show called The Green Room in Los Angeles, and she was the last comic on a showcase of so many comics and came in and just brought it. Was really authentic, vulnerable, magical, connected with the crowd, and was a very healing experience. And in this podcast, she also has a podcast called the Shamic Podcast, but it has a lot of segments. She does a reading with her guests, like a tarot card reading. And it's really, really cool, unique idea. But with that, on this episode, we ended up talking about healing and spirituality for much of the podcast, and made a beat about manifestation and sexuality. I was going to say coming, but because it kind of is about manifestation and coming. Yeah, because I asked her if she had ever had like mixed in spirituality with sex, and we got into that a little bit. It was a great podcast, man. I felt like I learned a lot from it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you think of any of those spiritual practices, Ronnie. Are you into or black magic, and because you're in the Philippines, you know?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
not that what she was doing was black magic.
No.
I'm just joking.
I'm not doing it I'm not as into it, but because of this podcast, a lot of it is resonating with me. So it's rubbing off for sure. Dude,
I know. I was like, I didn't realize how many of these podcast episodes were going to be very spiritual.
Yeah.
Monterey's this one was so natural, the way that she talked about it. Because you know how like, definitely with both Christianity and general spirituality, it can come off kind of like non-relatable because it's just using language from that belief system. Hers was very much like, oh, this could benefit everybody. And it's very, very relatable and approachable. So I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Again, check us out. We're on Instagram, Bits and Beats Podcast, patreon.com/Bits and Beats, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere. Forgot to promote my stand-up dates.
Yeah, do you have dates?
But yeah, go on my website. It'll be Chicago, Vegas, Connecticut. We're locking in Houston and Tampa and Spokane, Washington. And we might be adding in San Francisco and Reno as we speak. So, but check it out, www.jrdeguzman.com. Man, y'all are so special to me. And this is a special podcast. Check this out. Guys, welcome to the Bits and Beats podcast. This is what episode is this? Episode 9?
9.
Oh, it's 9. I'm trying not to curse as much. By the way, we got an awesome guest. The last time I was in LA, I was just pleasantly surprised to see this comedian's amazing set. It really took me aback. I watch a lot of shows, and I'll always be watching comedy in a way that I'm like analyzing it. I'm like, oh, there's the joke, this, that. But I really got to just watch this set and just enjoy it. And
thank you.
She talked a lot about like I don't know how to say it, but it was like you talked about like trauma and stuff from the past, but I kind of discussed like I could tell it was from a deeper place, like a place of healing, which a lot of comics don't do. We just stay in our traumas and then tell jokes about it. So I'm excited to have her on this podcast, talk to her about all kinds of stuff. She has a podcast called the Shamic Podcast. Go check it out. I got to watch a few episodes, and yeah, so I'll introduce today's guest, Monarey Martinez. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those kind words.
Oh, of course, of course. What's just like let's just check in. Let's just figure out where to start there, you know? Like, what's going on in your life? How are you feeling, like, just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Let's go there.
Right now, I feel pretty good. I think a lot of people, like most recently, I feel like, I mean, at least for me, I was a little like off, like just in terms of like trying to be like, all right, let me give myself a schedule. Let me like give my life some structure. Let me like balance everything. I think that's always usually like the major theme is like, sometimes I'll be too spiritual where I'm just like constantly like floating and thinking of like all this, bullshit. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I still have to pay my bills. Like I still have to like clean and do my laundry. Like no matter how spiritual I am, it's like stuff still has to get done. And then same thing with fun. Like sometimes I get hard on myself where I'm like, I don't want to eat meat or like, I don't want to drink alcohol. But then I'm like, it's okay to have balance and like go and drink with your friends sometimes. Or, if everybody's eating pizza, it's like you can eat pizza. It's like I try to do the 80-20 rule for sure.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. I'm going to just start there. And plus, it was hard for me to talk and play piano right there. Just to be real. Yeah. Well, it's cool to hear that balance because, I'll see a lot of Instagram spirituality pages and you only see like the spiritual part of it.
Totally.
But that's another thing I appreciated about you was it's like it's a little bit more authentic to me. I have just like a list of compliments in my mind for you.
Oh, I was like, please do. I was like, I love compliments.
External validation, it feels so good.
Especially from comics, because I'm the same way too. And I'm sorry I didn't get to see your set because I came late to that show.
I'm really good, so it's like totally chill.
But I'm really, I did look at your Instagram and see the stuff, and I was like, okay, cool. And I like how you like infuse like music and comedy because it's like there's a lot of music and comedy, and God bless everybody. But it can get very like hoaxy or like cringy or whatever. Definitely. But I was like, I could tell that you probably like if you didn't do comedy, like you could have just done music. You know what I mean? Like you had like actual talent in music and actual talent in comedy, which is like combining them is cool.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. And it is something where I do find like there's, like I said, all music comedy and stuff is great, but I do really enjoy the ones where you can also just listen to the music by itself, like it's good music.
Totally.
Definitely helps. I mean, it's just like doing characters. If someone's going on there and doing an impression and it's like not good at all, it's not.
Or they're doing an impression, but they're just good at the voice, but like the jokes aren't good. Yeah. It's like it's got to be the accuracy in the impression, but also like the scene or the act out or whatever they're doing has to have some content to it too.
Yeah, exactly. And so back to complimenting you though, there was let's go on that. Yeah, I felt like the word that really stuck in my mind was just the authenticity of it. Like I think you came on like it was the showcase where you came on last after like I don't know if you saw, but there were like 20 comics on the show.
Totally. Yeah, because I got there late and I was like, shit. And then they're like, oh no, there's like still 6 people ahead of you. I was like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, you got plenty of time. But it was so refreshing, like, because it felt like you just got on and there was no, of course there's always like an act or whatever, but there was, I felt like you just came on and were you. It was easy for you to step on. There's no like fourth wall. And it was just very authentic. And with the topics that you were talking about, which were heavier, it didn't feel heavy the way that you were telling it, which is why like I wondered if there was what your healing journey was with all that stuff to get to that place.
For sure. I think for me, I mean, the last few years have been the most beneficial because before that I was kind of like typical comic where I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I went through all this shit, but if I have jokes about it, that means I'm fine. But you actually have to, I always like equate it to like a physical injury. So it's like when you get a physical injury, it's like, say you sprain your wrist or break your ankle. It's like, you can't just be like, okay, well, like, let me just like laugh it off. It's like, no, you have to be in a cast and you got to like, level it up for 3 weeks and you can't like go on it for a while. But because it's physical, like we can see it, so we know when it's healed. But with like emotional trauma or, just pain that's you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know when we're healed, but we can tell when we're triggered. So say somebody comes up to you and you're defensive, or say you're jealous of other women. It's like, that's an emotional
internal
wound. Totally.
Wow.
And so I just started really paying attention to those, and I just always kind of denied it. Like, no, it's okay. I'm not jealous that their parents pay their rent. What? No.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I constantly would deny it. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, no, bitch, like, you're jealous. Like, you're angry. Like, why is this bothering you so much? Yeah. And then that's when I was like, all right, I gotta work on this.
What a dope
shit.
Spiritual healer you'd be to work with, to like get a no bitch.
Yeah, the no bitch.
Because that's when you know, like, you have something to confront. There's more healing. No bitch.
Yeah, no bitch. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been on my own like sort of healing journey for like the last 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Where I was in like recovery. I did like 12-step stuff, kind of bouncing around a few programs and everything. And
was it like for alcohol or for drugs or for both?
For alcohol and like sex, love, codependency.
Right.
Like I jumped around a few programs.
Right.
And I found it was weird because like everything built up to a point where those internal things where I was feeling triggered at stuff and I didn't know why. At first I thought it was just burnout. Right. I was like, oh, so I went to like therapy for burnout. And then I found it was all this deeper layered shit, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of brought me into like the first day of this journey, even though your whole life is a journey. But I was wondering, so for you, was there like a moment where you're like, okay, I have to heal something or something's up?
Yeah, I think the moment for me was like after like a few failed relationships, because like I've always felt like the relationships were failing because I was always looking at the other person, where I'm like, well, they do this and this bothers me, or if they didn't do this and this wouldn't be like that, or like I just didn't choose the right person. And then after a while, it's like maybe I have to take some responsibility. Wow. Like the common thread is me. And so I dated this guy who was like such a beautiful human. And, you know, he would like start to point things out. And I was like, oh, okay, you're right. Like, I do have to work on these things. I do have to. And I just like, I mean, I was always spiritual before that, but I would just kind of like, I would meditate and I would do like these rituals, but I wasn't healing. I was just like doing, you know, kind of like if you just go to yoga or, you know, if you're just like, oh, I'm journaling or whatever, but it's like, you're not actually like releasing anything. You can't just take things in, like things have to like come out. And so that's when I started doing like inner child work, shadow work, hypnotherapy, regular therapy, and just like, yeah.
Oh my God. I could ask you or talk to you about this like all day. That stuff.
Yeah.
The inner child work, was that in therapy?
The inner child work, no, I actually did it on my own. A lot of stuff I just YouTubed, honestly. Like I would I would like meditate and then like kind of like have like an intuitive, like, you know, word would pop up and they're like, okay, this is a lot of inner child work. And I'm like, all right. And so I just like YouTube, like how to do inner child work. And they're like, write a letter to yourself or recreate the scenarios from like when you had a bunch of trauma and go hug that child like in that moment. And like, so it's like a lot of stuff like that.
I love that so much. I'm so glad. There was some instinct, like when I saw that story, I was like, there's so much there and so much like of value to people to like hear about this stuff. For sure. Because I think everyone can benefit from that, doing inner child work, but not know if it's accessible. But to hear that you were able to start that journey on YouTube.
And then I tell everybody that because everybody's like, oh, I don't have money for therapy. I'm like, dude, I did hypnotherapy on YouTube. Like this woman, her name's Marissa Peer. She's amazing. And she has like a couple free ones on there. I did shadow work on YouTube. Like I did basically everything on YouTube and then just like meditated and like went out in the sun, just like, you know, made like smoothies. It's like, I did like everything like cheap and free. Do
you now do like a service? Do you like, I don't know what you would call it, work as like a healer for people, or is it more so something you're...
Yeah, like as I started like healing myself, I started having like when I would meditate, like it sounds crazy, but like people who had like crossed over like started talking to me. And I was like, I thought I was becoming like a schizophrenic. I was like, cool, now I'm fucking schizophrenic. Awesome, great. And then I just would like write down what they were saying, and then I would like contact the person. So like the first person it happened with was my roommate, and the voice just started talking to me, and I just wrote down everything he said, and then I showed it to my roommate. I was like, am I crazy, or does any of this mean anything to you? And it was like, he said something about like Catholics, and then he said something about like a ring with a green stone. He said something about a black and white stuffed animal.
Oh
He said all this stuff, and then she was like, I have this ring from my dad. It has a green stone in it. A black and white stuffed animal is like a stuffed animal he won at the fair that I used to have. He got a divorce from my mom because she was like so overbearingly Catholic. Like, so all this stuff. And I was like, okay. And then that kept happening, and wild. Yeah. And so it was just kind of like, and it doesn't happen. Like, I can't just like talk to some mediums or psychics can do that. Yeah. It only happens to me like when I like meditate, and I'm like really in a meditation, and then people will like come through, and then I just tell the person. So that's why I basically started my podcast, was like, because I was like having all these like spiritual like meditations coming through. And then I was like, well, let me like do this with comics and like, you know, have fun, but then also like heal like the way I healed. So
yeah. I mean, that's beautiful. There's like, it's interesting that it's like you're healing and also healing others. There's this in 12 step. There's like the 3 layers is working with a sponsor, someone who's been through it before you, working with your peers to like go through your struggles together, and then being of service to somebody else. And it sounds like you've kind of done that naturally.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, I'm like, there's like sacred laws of like the universe where it's like, whether you believe in God or you don't, but it's like, they're just how, you know, Nikola Tesla or Einstein, like how they found out these like mathematical equations that always hold true. Like there's like sacred laws in the universe. Like if you are, you know, like generosity flows. So like if you receive something, you have to automatically give it back. Like if you heal, you have to like teach. So it's like there's like these sacred laws that it's like if you just keep them in motion, like it just like continues to like work for you. Dude,
I'm getting like chills so often in this. Yeah. Well, because I'm so happy to have you here. There is like, and I feel like I'm lucky I'm doing this podcast to, you know, share like people's opinions with the world and their views. And it's such a gift of what you're sharing with people. But I also get so much from this where I'm like, this is cool that I get to talk to you about this. Somebody said something the other day. So I go to church now. It's interesting because like I believe in all spirituality. It's just like I went to Catholic church for my whole life, left for like 10 years, was atheist, agnostic, and then but found like a little bit more progressive, open-minded church, and was like, okay, I like the music. And they have like free coffee and all that stuff.
Yeah, you're like, they have snacks.
They got snacks. They did jujitsu at that school, and like jujitsu was such a big part of like my spirituality. It was just would get me out of my head. Yeah. And so I go there now. But just saying that because I'm always like, it's weird how I'm always self-conscious about the stigmas of Christianity, which is unfortunate because it does give me a lot. But I'm sure that can be in any spiritual belief. But
yeah, there's a spectrum for sure.
Yeah. How did you grow up in it with any spirituality, or how did you come to the spirituality you have now?
No, I didn't grow up with anything, which I guess I'm kind of happy about. But then like I would go to church with like some of my friends, and I remember like they were like born again Christians. And I would go, and same thing, I always liked the music, and I always felt it was like good vibes. But then I started to have a lot of like guilt and shame because I was like, well, I like hip hop, and it was always like, oh, you can't listen to hip hop, blah, blah. Or I was like, well, I'm a writer and I write about darker subject, or, you know, and then it was like, so I constantly felt shamed. And then now, like I've come like back again, like full circle, where it's like, I feel like Christianity, just like anything, like, you know, like, there are people who are psychotic with it, who are very close-minded and who, you know, are very judgmental. But it's like on the other end of it, it's like, no, there really are truly like loving Christians who are open-minded, and they understand that, you know, the Christianity is just a vessel for them to have like connection like with something higher. It's 100%. Not like, this is the only thing and this is the only way. And they're like, this is the way I use it, and this is the way that works for me. Yeah. So like those are because there is a church out here. It's called Agape, and it's like a non-denominational like church, and like they sell like sage and they sell like crystals and stuff. Yeah, so they're like super like spirit. And I started going. It's closed now just because of like they do like an online service. But I do like doing something that like, you know, is like with a group of people that's like minded, because there's just something with
Community.
like, you know, the power of numbers and community for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I went to this like, you know, worship. I don't know why I'm doing this. Is what it's called.
Yeah.
I went to the worship night on Wednesday. It was the music night, and it's crazy how, you know, I actually listen to lo-fi hip hop Christian music. You're talking about how you can't listen to it. And that's when I found out, I was like, this is the kind of music I want to listen to, and it's about you know, spirituality. But that night it was just so powerful. And I think it was because of the energy of so many people being in the same room, having a relationship with some greater power. But I do believe you can do that in a group of people meditating, or a group of people, you know, doing healing with a sound bowls.
Yeah, sound
and all that
bowls,
stuff.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like food. You're like, yeah, you're going to have a great meal with steak. You're going to have a great meal with sushi. You're going to have a great meal with pasta. It's like, whatever it is, it's the company, you know what I mean? And like, obviously don't overcook it and like put some salt on it. Yeah. But it's like, you know, whatever the meal is, like you can have a good meal. So like whatever the, you know, like I go to like these like moon rituals. It's like we do like a new moon ritual and a full moon, but it's like people think it's like it's not witchcraft. It's like we're literally like we're doing sound bowls, we're doing a meditation, we're setting intentions, we're showing gratitude, and then we're like manifesting like our goals. And it's like, you know, and it's like, you know, whatever feels good to you. It's just like, yeah.
And it's funny how, you know, you were saying how some people may think, oh, that's witchcraft. It's every spiritual belief. There's stereotypes, and there are those extremes that exist within the world. But it's like, it's, you know, everything that you're saying. There's so many similarities in the other like rituals of like spiritual practice, like setting intentions and prayer, meditation, manifestation, just asking for something, you know, from God or the universe. So So how would you define your spirituality now? If there's like,
I would say that I definitely like, I guess I don't like saying God, because I think so many people get turned off by it. And I'm like, but I believe in like a higher power for sure. And like, I refer to it as like divine intelligence. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, we all are of the same divine intelligence, and it's something like way bigger than like our little brains can like conceptualize. And so I just know if it's like, if you tap into it and you follow like sacred laws of like being grateful and being of service and, you know, healing and like trying to like ascend, like you will be on this path. And like that to me is like following the path of like Christ consciousness, which doesn't have to be Christianity. It's just like accessing your brain and like full capability as Christ or Buddha did, you know? Yeah. So like, yeah.
Oh man. And I think that's it. I can tell that you've done I don't know if research is the right word, but you've like, you know, taken knowledge from each thing and questioned it for yourself, as opposed to, because nobody just told you, hey, this is what's right. This is what to believe. And you're like, okay, I'm going to have these sacred laws, which unfortunately I do believe some Christians have, where they're just like, this is the way to believe. And they're like, okay, yes. Totally. So like, I don't know how you compiled that, if it was like reading certain books, like again, Google, YouTube.
I definitely, so like I was like, went to a bunch of Buddhist meetings when I was younger. I went to like a bunch of, because I was trying to figure out, I'm like, what am I? So I was like, you know, I went to like born again Christian churches. I went to non-denominational church, Agape. I went to, went to like a bunch of like Buddhist meetings at SGI. And then I went to like a bunch of like witch stuff, but then I was like, I don't like anything with like spirits or like not spirits, but like, because, you know, I believe people are spirit, but I was like, I don't like anything with entities or like invoking. I was like
inviting something into your life that could be a little more damaging.
And I'm like, I'm not, if people want to do that, God bless, but I'm like, I just know. I was like, not for me. So I just did like a bunch of research and like went to like a bunch of different things, and then I kind of just was like, took whatever I liked from whatever, and I'm like, okay, I'm like a spiritual eclectic, you know what I mean? I'm like, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in this.
Like a spiritual DJ, kind of.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's cool that you went to all those different things and like, and how you gathered it.
Yeah, I've always been like, that's kind of always been like my whole like personality or just like goal or like mindset is I've always been like a explorer or a researcher. Like I've never been the type of person where you can just tell me information and I'm like, okay. I'm like, no. Like I have to personally experience it and arrive at it through an actual like physical, you know what I mean? Like arrival.
Like you have to explore it, feel it, like research, not just like research and read, but like now you get into the thick of it. Has there been any like specific journeys you went on where it's like, let's say, like I know in my own life, like I am similar where I did van life for like a year because it was something I always wanted to do, but I was like, I have to know what it's like. I have to know if I hate it. I have to know if I love it. I have to know what it's like to be alone that much. Yeah, can I do this? And I always just like know that if I jump in, it will take me to where I'm supposed to go if I feel it. Yeah. Have you had like journeys like that where there was a question or a thing you wanted to research and you just jumped in full on and it led to some kind of experience?
Totally. I mean, I don't know if I should. Yeah, it's fine. But
it's
like,
up to you. Up to you. We can cut anything out. So
no, but for me, I was gonna say it was like psychedelics, like where I was like never tried drugs my whole entire life because like my dad was a drug addict and I was like, oh my god, I'm too scared. And then when I tried psychedelics, like one, it was like so healing and so powerful, but two, that's when I started to like I experienced like an ego death. Where like basically what that means is like you feel like you physically like leave your body and then you like become like, you know, when you always hear people be like, we're all one and like we're all the same consciousness and you're like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, but then when you feel it, you're like, oh my God, duh, that's what they're trying to say. So it's like you experience like I when I do psychedelics, I do it like very spiritually. Like I'm in meditation like the whole entire time. I'm not just like, ooh, stars, like so when I meditated, I felt myself like it felt like I was crossing over and I was like, wait, am I about to die? I'm like, what is this? And then they're like, keep going. And I'm like, okay. And I could feel like my brain like turning off, but I still had thought. And then they were like, keep going. And I was like, and then I was like, oh, I feel like I'm trying to like cross over. It kind of like looks you know, when something's not in focus. And then you're like, come on, get in focus. It felt like that, but like a feeling. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I am love. And then as soon as I was like, I am love, like it shot through my whole entire body. And then I like physically couldn't feel my body anymore. And then I was like blasted out. And I was like, oh my God, we're all just like this little speck of intelligence that's evolved. And then, you know, life and, you know, planets and everything derives off of that. And then humans, you know, so it's like, it's just this huge giant cycle. And you're like, oh, I get it. I get it now. And then once I had that love throughout my whole entire body, I was like, that's what everybody's searching for. Like,
I was just going to say, I think that's what we're all trying to reach.
Totally. And everybody, they get it. They try to, you know, some people reach for vices. Some people reach to people. Some people reach for stimulation. So they're like, constantly watching TV, video game, but it's like at the end, it's like that thing that everybody's reaching for. I'm like, oh my God, we just want to like fulfill like that love in us.
We're trying to get back to that like extreme peace / that place where we came from, which is love.
Totally.
And it's wild to me because I think the attempt to reach that is so admirable. And it seems like it's a thing we can try every day, if that makes sense, like every second. And so now I'm kind of like a peace junkie now. So like I'll go to like a bathhouse and do like a steam room, sauna, cold bath, warm bath. I'll do like float tanks.
Love it.
Like anything to just sort of feel that peace and get in touch with that. Like if I could be in touch with it nonstop, I would. And I don't want to like. I'm really being careful with my words these days. Where it's like I want to be able to like process any negative feelings or fears that I'm feeling. But because of the ideas of manifestation, I'm always like so afraid to talk about that. Right. Do you ever have that balance? Because I'm trying to figure out how to do it and not be like, they call it like toxic positivity. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, totally. I tell myself, I'm like, when I feel it, I go, don't peace and love and light this away. Like you have to, you know what I mean? So like whenever all your feelings are valid. So it's like whenever I have something happen and I'm like, I feel that negativity or I feel that anger, I feel jealousy or whatever, I treat it like a breadcrumb. And so I'm like, all right, let me go down this breadcrumb. And then I just unpack it with myself. So I'm like, say somebody just did something and I'm like,
try not to swear, but I'm like, okay, this whore. And I'm like, all right. And so I'm like, well, why do I feel like she's a whore? Or why do I feel like she's a bitch? Or why do I feel, and I'm like, well, I think she's this because, you know, she did this to me, and that's selfish. And I'm like, okay, like, are you just disappointed in her because you gave her a lot of your, I just keep unpacking it until I arrive at like understanding. So you're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to be hurt, you're allowed to be jealous. You just have to like get to a point where you either understand yourself and why you felt that, or you understand them and why they did that to you, and just like not take it personal.
It's like you get the feeling, it's okay to feel the feeling, and then explore it. Like listen to where it's trying to take you. Yeah,
and just keep asking yourself the questions, and like until you're like, like, because even with my own parents, like, I mean, that took me so much work. Because like no matter what, I just still had. I'm like, no, my mom's a bad person. Like her boyfriends like abused me, and she never stuck up for me, and she never left that, and so I just constantly just had all this anger. And then now to this day, like my mother still doesn't talk to me, and I'm like, oh, she's such a bad mother. She's such a bad mother. And then I'm like, I found out that my mom was like sexually abused too. And so the reason why she never helped or like looked after me is because she hadn't even dealt with it herself. And then on top of that, when she talked to me, because I'm very confrontational, I make her feel like shit without even, where I'm like, you were a bad mother and you did this and you did that. And so instead of me being like, you're such a bad person, I'm like, oh, you're such a hurt person. Like you're such a like, you're a fragile person that like my strength like weakens you. And instead of like seeing that like as a bad thing, I try to like understand her, and it's hard, you know what I mean? But it's it's, you know,
I can tell by the way you're sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh no, you're fine.
I can tell by the way that you're even talking about each of those steps of that situation, something so hard that you have done work to heal and to take pause and understand. Because it's like really beautiful the way you talked about it, and thank you for sharing it as well.
Oh yeah.
Dude, you're like the most emotionally healthy person I've talked to in a while about, like, especially in the comedy world, but in general, where it's nice, it's cool to talk about this stuff and to hear how you process each thing. It just seems like you're just growing in consciousness like every day by the stuff you're handling, and I'm sure it's not like perfect, you know, I know that,
of course.
But just hearing the way that you deal with it is really, really special.
Yeah, I just try to be honest, because I feel like for so long, like they're like, you know, I didn't even like realize like how much like I don't want to say hated myself, but how much I was like disappointed in myself, or like had
like
shame.
Negative self-talk almost, or
just like kind of like I would just be like, oh my God, why do you think like that? Or like, oh my God, like you're so annoying, or like, oh, you're so lazy, you're such a piece of shit. And it was just like, I'd constantly talk to myself like that, which I didn't even like. I thought that if I was hard on myself, that was good. Cause I'm like, if I'm hard on myself, that means I'm disciplining myself, and that means I'm like getting better. But I'm like, you know, it's like one of those memes or something where it's like, would you be friends with anyone who talked to them the way you talk to yourself? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I kind of am really mean to myself. And it was just, I was just hard on myself all the time. And then I was like, all right, like this doesn't feel good. Like, you know, and you just think that because you've done something for so long, or it's because it's been your truth for so long, that you think like, this is just what it is. And there is no getting better. There is no, you know, getting over it. And
that's the way that it is. Yeah,
that's just the way that it is. And then just little like work here and there. Like I remember the first time I reached peace in meditation, and I was like, oh my God, did I die? Am I in heaven? Am I in heaven? And they're like, no, this is just peace. And I was like, what?
And you kind of are in a way. Like I believe in this, like the language of it all. Like heaven can be now and hell can be now.
Totally.
Where heaven can be peace, release from thoughts, release from words, release from ego, release from self, whatever you'd want to call it. And hell can be like anxiety, shame, depression, guilt, dishonesty, all those things.
Yeah.
And you said something so well there too, where it was all that negative, or not negative, like the shame and the guilt and the negative self-talk. If in a way it's not your fault, because it was maybe helping you survive certain hurts like growing up too.
For sure.
I don't know what the word, like like alchemizing all of your experiences.
Yeah, I always say alchemy. I'm always like, I'm a motherfucking alchemist. I'm like, you take your poison and you make medicine. Yeah. You take darkness and you make light. And I always said that, like, because I grew up like really poor too. Like I grew up like on food stamps, like Section 8. Like we didn't have a car. Like had to take a bus everywhere. Like I didn't go out to eat and video games. Like I grew up like poor. And I always like being an example because I'm like, all right, like there's no excuse. Like if I could come from literal chaos to harmony, if I could go from rags, I'm not rich yet, but I'm like, if I can go from rags to like riches, and I could go from like pain to peace, it's like everybody can, you know what I mean? And it's like, I just like people to know that it's like, hey, whatever position like you're in, if you take advantage of like whatever is your now and you find the blessing or you find the positivity in it and you learn to like see life in that filter, I'm like, you literally can excel like at anything. Because I've watched myself do it where I'm like, wait a minute, like this is nuts. So cool. And I'm like, magic is real.
I was going to say the 5 words I wrote down when I was going to like introduce you, it was authenticity, vulnerability, magic.
Yes.
This one I can't read my own handwriting. Well, there's healing. Oh, and connection.
And connection.
That's what I felt from your set. And it's like, and then I saw your story post and I was like, oh, I got to have her on the pod. And I just had all my stuff stolen and was like, let me see if we can even get it in time. But if we did have a guest, I would love to have Monterey. And then, I do believe everything happens for a reason and people are brought into people's lives at a certain time. But there's also all the things that you're saying are like things that I'm working through in this exact moment.
Yeah.
Like recently in therapy the other day, I was just like in an EMDR, like trauma session, reaching this place of like vulnerability. I was like crying and everything. Yeah. And really realizing like, one of the problems I had was like, I know it's good to have affirmations and say, I love myself, but there were some periods when I would say it and not trust it.
Totally.
I would like say it and like, do you really? Do I believe that? Yeah. Because I was kind of abandoning myself with like abusing alcohol or abusing like relationships, not people, but like sex, basically using sex in an unhealthy way.
Totally.
And seeing that like I wasn't actually, taking care of the inner child stuff or listening to those things. And so like self-love is a big journey that I'm on right now. And hearing you like describe that stuff was so helpful. The way that you've alchemized it. And it's just like, I have that much more peace from listening to you talk about it.
Yeah. So. I always say, I'm like, dude, it's like we all are like, we're a bunch of chemicals and hormones, and like your chemicals and your hormones like react to certain things, like whether it's music, whether it's the sound of someone's voice, whether it's like, a collection of words like in lyrics or, a quote. But it's like when you're around these things and when they like connect with you, like they literally like unlock you. So it's like, it's just coding where you're like, oh, it's 8711, and 8711 to you might be like someone saying the words like, love yourself, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, or it might be a song and they're saying something and that hits 8711 for you. And then it's like, then there's like a release, or then there's like a moment you remember when you were a kid. And then you're like, oh, that's why that happened because and it's just like, it's just constant unlocking. And a lot of times, like, people don't realize this is, like, for me, like, a big lesson that I had to learn. I was like, oh, I have an addiction to suffering. Like, I have an addiction to struggling because my whole life, when I was born into just, just complete
You're comfortable
chaos.
With it.
Totally. Just degenerate parents that I was born struggling and suffering. So then your subconscious stops growing when you're 9 years old. So all those, like, innate, like, impulses and reactions, like, they're done when you're 9. So when you're out in the world and somebody does something and you're like, fuck you, bitch. And like, that's like your natural defense is because your subconscious was locked in. So you have to go in and go into your subconscious, rewire it to get yourself to like, learn how to react to these proper situations when you were programmed poorly because of toxic parents or toxic environments. So don't ever don't beat yourself up when you're like, I keep like falling to these patterns. It's like you have an addiction to suffering. And as soon as you like learn to like break that, where you're like, is the choice I'm making for myself, like, does this serve me or does this like make me revert or reverse? And so like every time I have a decision where I'm like, am I doing this out of survival? Am I just taking this job because I just want cash, even though I know it doesn't make me happy? I don't like these people. They make me feel bad. The hours are late. But I'm like, but I just need cash. I just need cash. I'm like, no. What you don't want cash. What you want is safety. What you want is peace. So,
safety,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just always try to like break things down and like have those moments where I'm talking to myself and just make sure like all my decisions are like, is this truly to my benefit? Is this truly like the road to like my peace? And then,
I love that.
Yeah.
For me, even that's like so refilling to hear that from another person. It's weird how it makes so much sense. Yeah. Hearing it through you.
Yeah.
How long have you been like on this like journey? Because even the way that you talk about it, it just it feels so like natural to look at each experience in that way, each decision. Yeah,
I'd say like I started practicing spirituality around like 2013, 2014. Okay. Like that's like when because I always like believed in it, but I wasn't like putting it into practice where I'm like, I'm gonna make sure I meditate. I'm gonna make sure like I'm, conscious of like what I'm eating, or I'm going to make sure like I try to, just like have like rituals with myself or whatever. Like that came in like 2013, 2014. But when I started to do the healing part, so I did spiritual, but I wasn't healing. And the healing has been like the last same thing, probably the last 3 years where I'm like, all right, I have to go back in time or whatever. Yeah. Work on that shit so then my current can be cool.
Yeah, there was something in there as you're describing all that stuff. It's weird because everything you're describing, like literally, I feel like it's like stuff that I have been thinking lately and just hearing it unlocked in somebody else. Yeah. Like I watched 2 movies. So I talked about this in the last podcast. I talk about like how the last time I cried every podcast. Yeah. But like I cried when I watched A Star Is Born. And at the time I was
with Lady Gaga, right?
Yeah. And if someone, it's whatever the experience is for someone, if they liked the movie or hated the movie, I think it was just because I was going through like a depression and like suicidal ideations at the time. Totally. And so it like unlocked that for me I was like, oh, there's something here, like pay attention to this. Totally. And some feeling I needed to feel more, or some like arrested like inner child or age that I was arrested at, like developmental wise because of a trauma that I had to go back and like rescue. Yeah. And like it's so interesting to think of it like that. And I've done like the healing for that stuff the last 3 years or so. And I found it's not like done. Now it's the next thing where I'm feeling triggers or vulnerability. Yeah. And I watched this movie Coda the other day. Coda. It's so CODA actually stands for, I think, Child of Deaf Adults. And so this girl has a family who's all deaf, but she's the only hearing kid in the family, and but learns that she has this talent for singing. But she also has a very codependent relationship with her family because she's the only hearing person, and they all really rely on her. Totally. And I started to see, like, oh my God, I think I basically cried for like the whole movie. Yeah. Like everything would come up and I was like, okay, there's something here. There's something there and something unlocked. And I feel like that's the place that I'm at. But I forgot why I brought that up. Yeah. But but that's true. That's why like film and art and music is just so important, is because like, at the end of it, it's just like, it's like touching our emotions, and our emotions are the things that like, what people don't know is like our emotions actually connect us in future and in past. So it's like, when you start doing hypnotherapy, or when you start, like, say you start getting into deep meditation, and like monks talk about this too. So like emotions are your bridge to your past and your future. So it's like, I've gotten into deep meditations where like, say I'm crying and I'm like hurting so much. And then like, when I feel that feeling of like that pain, I have seen, it was like a very quick like snap of it, but I've seen myself in a past life, and I'm like, oh my God, that's why I love, and I'm so attached to this person, and I'm like, I love them, like how come it's not working? And then that emotion, like I was feeling it so intensely that I saw like a past life thing with this person. Wow. Because emotions don't go away. Like emotions are like, they cross over with you just like your consciousness crosses over with you, because it's just a vibration like of like a feeling. And so, our emotions are really important to like
constantly, you know what I mean? When you feel them, it's like, okay, this is a bridge that can take you to like a creative space. It's a bridge that can take you to a healing space, or it's a bridge that can like take you to a bunch of like wisdom and knowledge of like, oh shit.
I have a question for you here too. It just feels like, you know, I'm going off of my own instincts and like connecting with it. How do you feel about transforming fear? As far as like when fear comes up, that emotion, how do you use that or alchemize that?
For me, like with fear, it's like, it's either two different bases. I go, is this fear I'm creating, or is this fear where like I need to react to this? Like, am I in actual danger? Like, am I fearing something, like some guy's being creepy to me, and I'm like, all right,
it's like protection in the present versus protection from a pain in the past.
For sure.
Still living in.
Because sometimes, you know, your fear is like, say you're dating somebody and you're like, I don't know, I just feel like he likes this girl or whatever. Like, that's me creating. And so how I talk to myself is I go, I always know that like I'm creating if I'm like asking questions. So I'm like, but does he like her? But does he do this? Well, like, I don't know. Are they flirt? Like, these are all questions. So that means I'm creating it, versus when it's instinctual, my gut will be like, you need to ask him this. You need to bring this up. This is like, so when it's like more commanding, then I'm like, these are my instincts, because it's like being someone who is like psychic or intuitive. Sometimes you don't know. You're like, is this just me having anxiety, or is this my goddamn, you know, intuition? And now I'm stuck. But it's usually, I tell the difference by questions or commands. And that's when I can tell the difference.
That's so good. And it's so practical. Like, it does make sense, because it does seem like fear has two moments that it comes up. Yeah. It's where, hey, this is a good fear. This is a boundary you need to set. Let's go with the relationship. This is a boundary you need to set. You're sensing that it's being crossed, and you are protecting yourself. Totally. And it's an act of self-love to like take care of yourself. God, you said that so well. And I'm really like asking a lot of these questions because I think, you know, guests would benefit from it, but also because I sense I would benefit from hearing your wisdom on it. Cause like in my, like for my dating experiences, the same thing. I'm trying to analyze where there's fear, and I can get growth because I'm seeing how I'm creating a fear, versus like there's also growth in the fear that needs to set a boundary where I haven't set boundaries in the past. Totally. Yeah. Because in the past I've been sort of an all or nothing guy. I've like run away. Yeah. The second there's fear, I'm like, this must not be good. Yep. I need to get out of this. Totally. I was very much so the same. Yeah. As soon as I was like, I'm like, all right, this isn't my person. Obviously they're not for me. Like, this isn't going to work. Like, and then just kind of like shut down. And like, and I would shut down to the point so much where like I started to physically be unattracted to the person. And then like, but then as soon as I started to like actually open up to the people I was dating, like, hey, because I didn't even know I had anxiety. I was like, I don't have anxiety. I'm not a loser. And then I was like, oh, and then I would explain to someone how I felt, and they're like, anxiety? And I'm like, no. And they're like, you have anxiety. I love that. Anxiety is for losers. Yeah, that's literally what I thought. You're dork, like, you're anxious. Yeah. And I was like, no, it's okay. And then I started to, you know, I would communicate like, because I get snappy or I get irritable when I get anxious, because I didn't know how to, you know, I didn't know how to communicate. So like I would just be like, okay, like let's just go. Like, don't touch me. Like, all right, okay, like stop talking to me. Like, because I didn't know. It's almost a protection to be annoyed at the person. Yeah, because to just rather shut than them let down them in, and get them away from me. And then I started communicating like, sorry, I'm feeling, you know, fearful of, you know, whatever this is, and so I'm taking it out on you. And now, or like when I'm in my lows, like sometimes when I have been in depressive states, I start to see everybody through that filter. So it's like, it's my own depressive state, but then I start to see my work through this depressive state. Then I start to see my relationships. I start to see my friendships. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, why is she calling me so much? Oh, she's always so needy. Like, and I'm like, no. She's fine. I'm depressed. So now I'm filtering all of her actions through my depression. And so like I had to like learn like, all right, when I get in my lows, I have to set up boundaries, and I have to communicate to my loved ones like, hey, now my best friend, she's a comic too, but she's like, are you graveyard baby right now? And I'm like, yeah, I'm graveyard baby. So cool. I love, and that's the thing is like those deeper levels of intimacy, you kind of create a language with people. Yeah. 'cause they understand you better from letting them in, but it is scary.
Totally.
Like, it makes sense that in the past, like, let's say you, or I'll do I statements too. Like, it's such a recovery thing.
Yeah.
But like, I similarly would shut down, start to like seek the things I was afraid to ask for in my relationship for other partners, which is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And like, just, it was almost like a protection to start to see that, oh, this isn't good. It was more so there were fears that I needed to get past, but wasn't willing to.
Totally.
And it blocked intimacy versus now I see the value in a partner now to go deeper towards that fear.
Yeah.
It's like everything in my body is saying, run away.
Yeah.
No, what the hell are you doing? And then creating the fear. But like, if I get to the other side, the love is so much stronger. The intimacy is stronger. It's just, yeah. So it was cool hearing the Graveyard Baby reference. Like, that seems like a closeness that was built out of her understanding and you communicating your own vulnerability.
Totally.
What you were going through.
And my other friends, like, they know, like, they're like, oh, she's hermiting. Like, they get it because, you know, I always say, I'm like, dude, you know, life it's seasonal, it's cyclical. So it's like, you know, there's no year where we can like skip winter.
It's funny, like, you know, I believe in universe stuff, or like, I almost was interested in your tarot reading experiences too. Like your first few that you did, is it tarot that you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. The first few that you did that you got done for yourself, were you like a believer in it right away? Did you have some experiences that were good, some were bad?
Yeah.
How's that been?
I think it's like comedy. So it's like there's comics that, you know, just do their job and you're like, okay, like you got paid, you did a good job. I'm not going to remember this. Like you did your jokes, like whatever. And then there's, you know, comics that are hacks where you're like, dude, you should not be doing this. Like, this is not your life. Come on. And then there's comics where you're like, oh, you're special. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's the same thing with medium, psychic. I mean, any cops, like whatever. It's like, there are the people who are righteous and, you know, are leading with like light or love. And then there's people who are like, this is just a paycheck to you. And there's people who are god awful at it. So I've had an experience like with everything with like psychics before where I'm like, bitch, here's just $40. Like you just don't have to do this anymore.
It's like, this is done. Yeah.
And then I've had
what was it? What could you, so I'm interested because I've had that too. I had good ones and bad ones. What was it about that one that you knew like, okay, this is not it's psychology, like the way they ask you, like if they keep asking you it's not always true because sometimes they're, I don't want to say like insecure, but like when you read people, like now reading people, I understand why people ask questions based, because if you say it as a statement, because like a lot of the times too, like when it depends on if you like receive messages or if you're just looking at the cards, but like when you follow your intuition, it can be very vulnerable to be like, wait, you're like, is there some sexual abuse with a brother? And like people are like, what? Sure. No. And then you're like, but if you say like you were sexually abused by your brother, and then people are like, no, I wasn't. And then it's like more awkward. But if you like ask it, then people can kind of tell you, but people lie sometimes too, because people are ashamed or embarrassed. So it's like but there are some psychics where it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is psychology where you can give very blanket statements where you're like, okay, so you're having difficult with like your love life. It's like, well, who isn't? Like cold reading versions of it.
Totally.
Yeah. So then what was like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, but I'm just saying, so it's like there's certain blanket statements like that where like at first when they first start giving that to me, I'm already like turned off. But then there are psychics who like come in and they just are like, all right. And they just say something that's so oddly specific where they're like, okay, like, your favorite number is 38, and whenever you see 38, and then you're like, okay, like I'm on board.
So wild.
Yeah.
So wild. Okay, yeah, because like, and how, I was going to ask you when you know it's good.
Yeah.
Is it like a feeling, or is it specific, like, almost like there's a signal from the universe that there is something connecting with you right now, like that number?
It's a little bit of both. So like, I'm the same way. Like I'll get like chills or something when I'm around somebody, but like, or when I'm looking at the person, like I do have like 3 numbers that I always see, like 11, 38, or 47. If I see any of those numbers, like say it's in the psychic's phone number, or say it's in her address, or say it's like the time that she messages me back. And if I see my number, then I'm like, all right, we're good, we're on board. But, and then like say I just went into a center, I didn't look up a phone number or address, it'll be like you know, when I talk with her immediately, I can kind of just tell, like, I'll get chills or something. And I'm like, all right, this girl's like, she's like real.
Yeah, I had a good one where it was like the ones where I feel where it's bad for me in my experiences have always been like almost too absolute to the point that it's like none of it even matches or makes sense. And then I'm like, well, now I feel like you're forcing me into this thing.
Totally.
And it feels almost manipulative.
Yeah.
Where it's like I might leave that looking for the thing and it's not even, it's just somebody making stuff up to me. Versus the ones that I feel like have been good for me, it's like I leave with some wisdom on a situation or moving forward in my life, but not necessarily saying this is the answer. It's like I have kind of an
guidance
approach.
And not only that, but the other way too, like if anyone's like listening and they're like, another like red flag is if someone tells you there's a curse or a hex on you and that they have to like, you have to do like a spell candle and then they have to like buy you certain crystal. Yeah. Like if there's like more things to do and errands, you're like, okay, this person, you know, is.
That's so fun. That's like the exact one that was like one of the worst ones I'd been through.
Yeah.
It almost like I don't want to say messed up, but it also, the girl I'm seeing, we both went there together.
Oh yeah.
And then she asked her to like leave the room.
Yeah.
And was like, yeah, that girl over there, she's not the one for you. But if you light this candle, like it'll reveal to you the person, all that stuff. And I left. We both were like, dude, I hate that bitch.
Yeah,
like,
dude. That
speaking of that thing, and so now I got to explore. Why do I hate that?
Yeah.
Like, the thing you're talking about. But it was also just like we were like pretty early on dating wise, and it was just anything that would get in the way.
Right. But
we saw it as
any psychic who says that to you, are just kind of like, you should. It's the same thing with therapy. It's like you should guide people to the answers. Like you want them to arrive at it. So say she really saw that she wasn't for you. It's like there's a way to be like, you know, when you're around this person, like, do you feel fulfilled? Like, do you see this person in your future? Does this person make you feel special? And then you can start answering the questions, and then you can be like, you know what? But at the same time, I always tell people, I'm like, dude, dating doesn't have to be black and white. People don't have to be your soulmates. People don't have to be the person forever. It's like sometimes you do need to have experiences with people, because it's like that experience is going to teach you a lesson, or that experience is going to open you up to someone, or it's going to get you a job that you would have never had you not met that person. So it's like, as long as someone's giving you respect and you're giving them respect, and you're having communication, and there's like some sort of like trust and authenticity, it doesn't have to be in love and magic or whatever. It's a partnership and it's a teammate that you're just like working with, and it's like, that's okay, you know?
Preach. That's like so healthy.
Yeah.
That sounds such a healthy place. So if you want to share on it, how is dating on a conscious level? Like, what's your approach, or like what's your like outlook on dating from that?
Yeah,
viewpoint?
I try to, I feel like I'm very honest, like super, super honest, to the point where it's like, you know, it might not always be to my best benefit, but it's like, I have to be that honest, because then it just makes me feel constantly safe and comfortable. Just like knowing that I'm like, I've expressed my intentions, I've expressed my views, I've expressed my boundaries, I've expressed my triggers. And I'm like, so it's like, you know, this is what I'm serving. And if it's like, you want to eat up, like, here's a spoon. But like, if not, like, I don't have anything to hide. So I'm not a type of person where I'm like, it's just going to be this one person forever and ever. And some people it might be. But for me, I feel like I do have a lot of love, and I feel like I do have a lot of, you know, different people to light up. And so I'm like, maybe I'm a person that I have a new partner every few years. Or maybe I do just have one partner forever. To me, it doesn't matter. I'm not like, I think like as an individual, like when you do get to like full love, you're like, oh, then it doesn't matter if I have one person or several people, just as long as like each person is like, you just have meaningful experiences with. It
sounds very freeing and healthy, the approach of just being honest from the get-go.
Totally.
Because, you know, these are the boundaries. You know that someone's coming, like, that you are safe because they understand that.
Yeah.
And also you can probably weed through people really quickly.
Totally.
Like, oh, this person's not willing to... I saw this thing, it was like saying like, it's like asking a kid to play when you're a kid.
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I'm dope, but I would love to play with you. If you want to play, that's awesome. If not, I'm still dope.
Yeah, I'm still dope. Yeah, because I don't like I don't like the pressure of like, this is your person forever and you just have to make it work and this is a commitment. And I'm like, no, because people grow and people change and people evolve. And, if my partner constantly evolves at the same speed that I am, great. But it's like, if anyone or anything disrupts my peace, like I love myself enough to be like, hey, this is okay. Like, it's not going to work I don't like the concept of like, well, like you just got to make it work. And that's what love is. And I'm like, no, love is to myself first. So I'm like, if you're not constantly at my level, like you got to go.
I love it. On that note, maybe we should transition into a beat.
Okay. Nice.
It's like we've kind of covered a lot of things. The only thing we haven't covered is comedy.
I know, right. Yeah.
And so it's like the two things that we both do. Yeah. Maybe it's because like I am in the same way or not the same way, but like I am around comedy all the time. And so when I'm with comics, I love talking about comedy, but I also want to ask them about the other stuff.
For sure. Because we're not all one-dimensional. I mean, some comics are, but it's like when you find comics, they're like, oh, you're three-dimensional. Okay, you have this whole other perspective and mindset. Yeah. It's nice to tap into that too.
Yeah, like on stage is such a sliver of the iceberg of the person.
Totally.
So it's like, there's so much more that went into like even a bit.
Yeah.
Where there's truth to it.
Absolutely.
Actually, I will ask a comedy. Maybe it's just a life thing, not comedy, but comedy can be a part of it. Is when you do let's say like a manifestation or set an intention, what is that for you right now? This can kind of be like a time capsule.
Oh, like what's like one of my goals, like specifically with comedy or?
No, it doesn't have to be just like, I guess just life. Like what are you sort of, are you manifesting now or like in like the manifestation? Is that part of like your rituals?
Yeah, I try not to manifest on specifics because I feel like that limits me. Like, cause people will be like, I want this car, or I want to get JFL, or I want to get this. But it's like, you really don't know if like, cause it's an algorithm. So it's like, you don't know if that's actually like in your algorithm, like for you to like reach your highest potential. So it's like, and you get stuck on it and then you become like desperate and then you become disappointed. Yeah. So I try not to manifest like anything that like has specifics because it's the same thing. You wouldn't manifest on a guy who wasn't paying or a woman who wasn't paying attention to you. Like you would be like, it has to be her. It has to be her. It's like, no, bitch, there's Stephanie over here that you'll have the best relationship with, but you're obsessed with Teresa. And then now you just completely like blocked yourself from Stephanie.
A weird, you might get that person in your life, but it might not make you happy.
Totally.
So would you manifest like a feeling and what's the word I'm like environment?
Totally. Yeah. Like I manifest like where I'm like, I just want to have, I want like a certain like lifestyle where I'm like, I want to be able to like, I want to be able to do stand up, but I want to write and direct my own television show. And I'm like, and I want to be like financially, abundant and be able to travel and take care of like my loved ones. And I'm like, so I just try to manifest like generals like that. And some people they can manifest specifically, but for me, for whatever reason, it never works. But I know other people it does. So it's like, I just know I'm like, all right.
Like I had a love-hate relationship with manifestation for a while. And I think a big part of that was manifesting specifics. Totally. Because, to be honest, it was wild where a lot of this stuff came true. Like, I got JFL.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's awesome.
I did JFL. This was like 2017.
Oh, hell yeah. Wait, did you do the same year Usama did it? Usama Siddiqui? Or no, he was 2018.
Maybe he was the year after. I did it the same year as, it was like Taylor Tomlinson, Rami Youssef, awesome. Preacher Lawson. I'm trying to think who else was on there.
Hell yeah. I love Preacher. Yeah. That's
a lot
great.
Of like,
good for you.
Oh yeah, it was such a great lineup. And then I got this. I did a 15-minute special the next year. There's like all these like cool things happening, and it's fun to think about it now. I still get excited, but it was interesting because I think the thing that I thought I would get from it in that moment, feeling wise, like just ultimate happiness. I'm done forever. I'm so happy. It wasn't necessarily that. So like, and some of them honestly, like I was more stressed out. But but JFL and all that stuff was awesome. It was a really great experience. And so I think the place I'm at now, it's like I'm almost afraid to manifest specifics. Like more and because knowing that it could be a trap. I could get the thing and be stuck in it. So I definitely relate with that. There is something about manifesting like the feeling you want to be in or the Like for me, it is also like an overflow of abundance where I have enough but can give it back to like people that I love and to be like creatively fulfilled and have like freedom.
Yeah.
But then if I said like I want to have a sitcom that's like this, sometimes I get scared. Like I don't know, maybe.
I think you could be specific with that. Like if it's like your creative thing and you're like, I want to have a television show on HBO, like whatever it is, like I think you can I think it's good to be specific about that.
Sure.
But I definitely agree with like doing it with like the environment you want to be in, doing it with the feelings that you want to, feel, and doing it with like, the resources that you want. You're like, I want to, be able to travel. I want to be able to help my loved ones. I want to be able to have my business where I can employ my family or whatever. It's like, that's how I try to manifest. And I feel like it works better for me, but I do know some people who manifest specifically and it works for them. And I think it just
each person's
depends
thing.
on.
I think on that note, what it is I'm working through still like past, like if I sit with what you're saying, everything you're saying, I'm like going to use this, And it's like, if I sit with where that fear is coming from, it's with like past manifestation stuff. And like, there's a limiting belief where I'm starting to correlate what happened with the stuff that I got at that time. But I don't think it's actually that. If anything, that stuff like guided me towards more healing. And now I'm just like, I'm afraid to manifest specifics. But I think I've seen it in other people's lives, especially right now, and my own life in the past, where it's like actually manifesting specifics can be so powerful. Like somebody will say something and 2 years later, like, oh, they have the manager that they wanted. They had this career thing that they wanted. So, okay. I want to get to this beat, but one more question about comedy. So like, it seems like you're doing a lot of cool stuff in comedy too. I've seen recently you were opening up for Drew Lynch at theaters and doing more things like that as well. And I would imagine like also on the pitching side, maybe there's stuff going on. But what are sort of the like goals in comedy right now for you?
I mean, one of my major goals for sure is like I want to get a credit, like a television credit, because I don't have a television credit yet. So I want that to happen, but my like big like baby like that I want like as like my goal is like I want to write, direct, and edit my own like television series. Like that's like where it's kind of like a autobiographical like story of my life, but I don't want to do it as like a typical show. I kind of like each of the episodes are like standalones, and they're just the seasons are based in themes of like love, money, healing, relationships, whatever. Cool. And just like all of like the lessons like from it and like how I reached happiness. But that's my,
I see it.
That's
I
my
see it for
goal,
you as you say it. I see it.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Well, let's make a beat.
Yeah. Yes.
I do. I really believe that. I mean that with the best of like, honestly, the real feeling. The second you said it, I could definitely see you doing it.
Thank you.
So let's see how this is going. This is a beat I made right before this, we did this pod. Let me see. I forgot what it sounds like, to be honest. All right. Okay.
Very smooth alternative R&B vibes.
That's like basically my life. Smooth.
Me too. I love like indie R&B, alternative R&B. I'm just like, yes. Yeah. Like,
all right. Well, then on that feel, are there like some words or like things that come to mind with this like beat or the Synergize. I'm thinking synergize. Okay. We said authenticity. Alchemize.
I'm feeling. Yeah.
Alchemy. Okay. I don't know what this beat's gonna be about. It could be serious. It could be funny. I don't know. Let's see. Ooh, yeah. Synergize. Alchemize. Angelize. Every kind of eye's gonna realize. I don't even rap, so I don't know why I'm rapping right now.
I love that though.
Yeah. Gotta heal your soul. Oh yeah. Drinking a protein shake right now. I'm just thinking about everything that's going on in my life today. I don't know why this feels like something you gotta like rap to.
Yeah. Here for it.
You work really hard and something amazing's gonna happen. I'm just reading the poster on your wall. See, I'm seeing if there's a chorus in here, but I think maybe this will just be one of those songs that we just like sing to, you know. Monterey, can I get another word?
Did we say authentic?
We did say, you said authentic. I didn't throw it in there though.
Oh, okay, I was like, did we do that?
Okay, because sometimes we do choruses. I think this one I'm just gonna freestyle over it. Oh shit, there we go. Yeah, I said I wasn't gonna curse, but I cursed in the beginning of that track. I was like, oh shit. That's how you know it's gonna be a good track, when it's like, oh shit, it's good.
Shit.
Oh shit. You gotta be authentic with it. You gotta be genuine. You gotta take time to heal. You gotta take time to feel what is real. What you see, what you feel, what you hear. This feels good right now. I'm vibing with your words.
What about transform?
Ooh, yeah, okay. If you're feeling fear, if you're feeling pain, just know you can transform into something sane, something whole in your soul. Feel good, feel right, feel everything tonight, yeah. It's like a baby making manifestation right now.
I like it, yeah.
I feel like that's a really powerful place to manifest, is the bedroom.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Totally.
Have you ever introduced like spirituality in the bedroom?
Yeah, there's actually like a spiritual like practice that like you can manifest like as you have an orgasm. 'Cause there's like a whole
Dude, I just
like,
talked about this the other day. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like people think that like obviously, you know, sex is for procreation and it's also for like pleasure, but it can be like a very like spiritual practice too, because it's like when you're when you're releasing so much energy, like when you're having an orgasm, that it's like you're supposed to, not I mean you don't have to, but you can manifest like right when you like right as you orgasm, like that's like the time like when you have like the most like pure like energy like processing forward. So it's like there's a whole like spiritual sexual
Sure, it's almost like the ego death
combination
thing too.
Yeah,
It's like why they call it like a little death.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, when you make me come, good stuff comes into my life, girl. Ooh, when you make me come, you make my dreams come true.
Yes.
We just manifested that shit.
Yeah.
When you make me come, I get a sitcom. When you make me come, I get to pay the bills for my family. When you make me come, I get a Tesla, baby. All right, I'll just end right there.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Monterey. I think that feels good for the beats. And
Yeah, that was awesome.
yeah, that was so good. I enjoyed so much of what you said on this podcast, and the beat was really fun. I think we got to a good place with manifesting.
Yeah, you're a little R&B heartthrob. Just, you know, just being spiritual, comedy, R&B. You got this.
Thank you. That feels good, especially coming from, it is that thing. Getting it from other comics means so much.
For sure. Because, you know, we like watch it and see it so much. So it's like, you know what I mean? You're like, you know, we know. You know, it's like a football player, like looking at another football player, be like, dude, that pass, like, that was fucking dope.
Exactly.
And you're like, this guy knows, you know, not the guy on the bleachers.
And I respect what you do so much too. So it means even more, because it's like, I think for me, there's so many different styles. It's not like a style of comedy that I love. It's, again, it comes back to like authenticity.
Authenticity.
Where I'm like, this person
Totally.
that is their thing on stage. Like, ride that, you know? And it can change.
Totally.
It can change
I'm
too.
right there.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
believe
thanks
that
for sharing
too.
your wisdom. Is there anything we can plug for you on this?
I mean, I don't know my dates in October. I know I'm going to be in Texas, but I guess I'll just plug my podcast now. The Shamic Podcast. It's on everything. It's a blend of, it's part shaman, part comic, one healing podcast. And we do tarot readings. I do meditative like insights. I do, topical stories, like just all the good feels, just, comedy and spirituality.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at.
It's a great podcast and such a unique thing. And I've gotten to see some cool clips of friends who've been on it and see the reading parts when it's like
for sure
accurate and reveals something. It's pretty powerful. Everyone definitely go check it out.
Thank you.
And your Instagram handle, we'll put it on as well, but what is it?
Monterey M. So MONAREYM.
Thanks again for being a guest here. You've been so awesome.
Thank you again so much. This was fun.
Yeah. So much blessings and healing going around. Guys, what a wonderful episode. That was amazing, huh? Manifestation and coming. Oh, the best of good stuff. The best of good stuff. Ronnie survived the hurricane. We were all worried there for a second.
Yeah. No, I'm all right.
Made it. You're okay.
Yeah.
It's good. Unfazed.
I don't care about anything anymore at this point.
Wow. So, that's like what Monterey was talking about, was letting go.
Yeah. I'm just letting go of everything right now.
Whoa. Hold on a second. Back up a step. That was a great episode. We talked about healing, spirituality, and you can tell that Monterey has really done the work to heal in so many different ways and has brought in so many different spiritual practices to make up her own. She's like a mixed martial artist with healing, instead of a takedown, it's like inner child work. Instead of a strike, it's like shadow work. I don't know what I'm saying, dude. But it was really nice. I felt like everything she was saying resonated with what I was going through in this moment. So I hope that helps other people who are going through stuff, because this is a comedy podcast, not only, but it's also just a life podcast where you can get some stuff out of it and then laugh with our beats. Time to go into a plug. You can check it out on Instagram, Bits and Beats.
Yep.
YouTube, Facebook. We're on all the platforms. Go check it out. Click follow on the Spotify page so you can get updates on when new episodes come out, and subscribe on YouTube. Yeah, now we'll go into some controversial topic where we'll fade out. I don't know. It's hard to tell, like, at what point spirituality becomes a cult. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Have I been in a cult before?
Have you?
Have I been in? I don't know. Have I?
Definitely have questioned myself.
Have you ever been kind of accidentally been in a cult or something?
My school for sure was a cult.
Was it a Catholic school?
It was Episcopalian.